everyone. Welcome to the 233rd episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have, actually, it's a less jam-packed show because Apple. We're going to talk about what they did and didn't say at their big news event. We've also got a bunch of new stuff from Google to talk about, and a report from Trend Micro that is basically like the IoT of terror. Plus, Samsara, an industrial IoT company, has raised $300 million, becoming an IoT unicorn. We've got a small chip that allows you to do Amazon's Madam A on a device, which is pretty cool. An update on Centralite, and more importantly, how the former founders of the company plan to support those products going forward. And news from Best Buy. Sad. Plus, our guest is Elizabeth Schlatten, who is the CEO of ECBM, a German company, who is going to talk to us about how your sales job is going to change in the Internet of Things. It's a pretty good interview. Plus, we're going to hear from our sponsor, Affero, talking about the knob vulnerability. So, let's kick it in gear with a message from another one of our sponsors. This week's sponsor is Simple Commands. Do you wish that you could do more automation and routines with your smart home devices? Simple Commands is a cloud-based service that not only allows you to access all of your smart devices in one place, but it also lets you use triggers and routines to customize and automate your smart home. All Simple Commands connected devices routines can be executed via webhooks for any IFT applet, Flick button, a Zapier applet, or Microsoft Flow. Sign up for an account online at www.simplecommands.com or download the app in your app store. I'm going to let you know that I did try this, and it's actually really flexible, much like Stringify was before Comcast bought it and killed it. So, check out Simple Commands. Alrighty, you guys. Let's kick it off with Apple. We were all waiting on Tuesday with bated breath for all kinds of great news from the company. I was personally looking forward to the rumored tracking device that would kill Tile, basically, a Bluetooth tracker. There was rumors of some sort of sleep tracking on the watch. What else was there that we were... Oh, I was hoping for HomeKit, but that was silly of me, right, Kevin?
Yes, that was very silly. We have a small HomeKit update, but it wasn't mentioned at all during the event, which I watched yesterday.
Yes. So, any thoughts, Kevin, as to why we didn't see any of this expected stuff other than the usual Apple doesn't want to share, Apple likes to surprise people?
Yes. Would you like me to share those thoughts?
I was like, are you going to tell us about them, Kevin?
So, it seems to me as I watched it that there was a lot of product news to share because Tim Cook usually starts out with all the wonderful stats about how everybody loves, the iPhone, how many users there are, what percentage are using the most current version of iOS as compared to competitors. And he skipped all that. So they just wanted to get right into product news. So I'm like, this is good. I thought we would see some of the things that you just talked about. Those things did not materialize in the event, and they closed it out with an update on retail that really didn't need to be there. It was like 20 minutes of, why are we listening to this? So I suspect that the features are not ready yet. And I am using the iOS 13 beta, and I have seen some issues. In fact, they had a massive problem with iOS 13.0. It's already, the beta's on 13.1. So new devices, when they start shipping later this month, will probably have 13.1, if not greater. I just think they're not ready.
Okay. Any idea as to why? I think you mentioned battery life when we were talking early.
Yeah. I mean, the sleep tracking on the watch, I think a lot of people would like that. But Apple does not put new products out that significantly reduce the battery life over the prior version of those products, because they continue to tout that you get the same battery life as last year, or you get more battery life. And they talked about that with the phones. They were saying up to 4 or 5 hours of battery life on the new iPhone 11 Pro. So if they can't figure out how to do sleep tracking without it significantly impacting the Apple Watch battery life, which they still say lasts a full day, and then they actually even said 18 hours, I don't think they're going to release sleep tracking until they can make sure that will work for.
Well, and they would have to actually have it be more because sleep tracking,
Yes.
you wear it all night. So
when would you charge your Apple Watch?
yeah, so that
Right.
makes sense. Unless you're going to stick a charger under the mattress. You could be baked in electromagnetic radiation all night, like wireless charging.
Kinetic energy from my snoring.
Oh, there you go. That is
Yeah.
a powerful source of energy. Okay. So let's talk about that HomeKit feature.
Right. So again, HomeKit was not mentioned at all, nor was the HomePod or anything relating to HomeKit. However, the product page for the HomePod has been updated quietly, and they have a couple features that are nice for music, such as music handoff between a phone and a HomePod or vice versa. That's nice. But the bigger one that I think we care about is multi-user mode, so that the HomePod will recognize up to 6 different voices, and it will personalize the responses accordingly. So that is kind of like how the Google Home products and the Echo products work if you've done like the voice match functionality. So this has been a long time coming. I don't know what's taken them so long to do this, but it is still not here, but it is coming.
I don't think they care about this product. This product isn't selling well. I think they just kind of threw it out there because everyone was like, come on, Apple. And then
maybe, but here's the thing. They often put a product out, again, that's like a minimum viable product for the most people, right? It doesn't do many things, but it does them really well. And then they add and revise and add all these new software features and functions. If they wanted it to sell more, why not devote the time to add those features instead of waiting like a year and a half to add them?
So Madam A is pretty mainstream. I think it's almost 30 million of them have been sold here in the US or some ridiculous amount.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how many people use it for, things like controlling a smart home. So maybe Apple's just looking at the actual facts. They're like, yeah, these are selling. Most people are setting timers with them. I don't know. It's an
might not be worth it. Yeah.
Or they're just like, we don't need all these fancy features. And
True, because
like people like us, we are not the norms.
Yeah, I hear that from time to time. I guess I should believe it now. You're right.
You are a little weird.
I know. The other thing is they've built a lot of these voice control features into your phone. You already get personalized results from it because you're the only user of Siri on that phone. So maybe that's their model.
All right. And we've got an update on the rumored AR glasses that we talked about. Was that last week? I think it was.
It was last week. And this also kind of leads back to why I think we didn't see things, because things just aren't ready. In the latest iOS 13.1 beta, there are several references to Apple's stereo AR headset efforts. So they're definitely working on that. There's just no doubt about that, because it's in the code. You can see it. Even the name of the board, which was rumored to be Starboard. So it's coming. I don't know when. We still don't know who they'll be aimed at and what you will do with them. That's a question we had last week.
Maybe we'll see it at the next big Apple event. Maybe we won't see it for years. Who knows? I'm not going to lose sleep over it. All right. Also this week, we had a big new product announcement from Google. I'm going to call it a big new product announcement. I don't know. It's the Google Nest Hub Max, which we have been talking about and we knew was coming. One thing to note, this is the first official built-on Threads certified device, which both Kevin and I found surprising because the Thread certification has been out for more than 2 years.
Right. It's the first certified one.
Right. Certified as being Thread compatible. So compatible with all of the other devices that are not out there yet that are also theoretically going to be Thread compatible. And for those of you guys who are like, what, Thread? Thread is a wireless protocol. It's, think of Zigbee, Z-Wave, all those guys. It's like that. It is a mesh networking protocol. It's low power and it is IPv6 compatible. So it goes straight out to the internet. It was developed like 5 years ago by Google, Samsung.
Was Nest involved when they were a separate company?
Well, yes, it was Google Nest was.
Google Nest, okay.
And I'm not sure if this is what, remember Tony Fadell was big about developing his own protocol for the smart home. I think this might be what he was thinking of, but I'm not 100% sure. That time is hazy and fuzzy in my memory since it was so long ago. But bottom line here is this product is out there. Sadly, it does not have Soli. I was very bummed by this.
I know you wanted that, and you were thinking because it had gesture capability to navigate or pause music and so on. You were thinking it was solely, but they're unfortunately just relying on a camera and algorithms.
That's really not unfortunately. It's
Well, it would have been cool to see what else could have been done with solely that a camera couldn't do, right?
Yes. And for those of you guys who are like, tell us more, you can buy this now at all kinds of places. It is $229.
10-inch display. It's a supersized version of the small Google Nest Hub. Do you have any of those?
I have the Lenovo 10-inch smart screen.
Yeah, I have the Lenovo 10-inch. I also have 2 Google Nest Hubs, the 7-inch model that does not have a camera. You can still use it for duo calls, but they're just audio on your end. You can see the other person. But this new one is 10 inches like the Lenovo, has a camera built in. Based on the reviews and the specs, I'm a little, wouldn't say concerned, but I'm raising an eyebrow about 2 things. One, it doesn't have a physical camera shutter. It's an electronic shutter, if you will, where you move the switch and it depowers the mic and camera. And you're trusting that it's depowered.
Right. Now, Google did just say, probably a couple of weeks ago, just implement things where on all of your cameras, when they're on and recording, they have a little green light. So
yes,
it indicates that.
Which is great. But that, I just worry about from a security and hacking standpoint, if you can get your way into that, the electronics that shut all that off, you can probably shut off the LED as well.
Right. And is the other thing that you're concerned about the face match technology?
Son of a gun, you know me so well.
Go figure. Yes, this thing is going to recognize your face. Google's going to learn your face. We had talked about this. I don't know if we talked about this or if this was on This Week in Google. But what is happening is Google is in the Pixel 4 phone that's coming out there expected to have facial recognition. And with this, comes all sorts of scary things, but also some potentially good options. So in this one, it's going to follow your face around. It's going to recognize people. And is it going to offer personalization based on the people?
You got it. Yeah. So as you walk by it, it will show, it'll pop up maybe your next calendar event and or any other information about your commute or weather. And if somebody else in the family walks past, assuming you have it set it up with multiple profiles, their information would pop up. Now, granted, you probably don't care that your family knows your information because it's your family. But I think people are more concerned about Google having the facial recognition information because even in the terms of service, it does say something about, we may use this to improve the product from time to time. It won't be stored in the cloud except on a limited basis every so often.
Yeah, that's, and is it stored once it's in the cloud? Is it there forever?
No.
Oh,
well,
okay.
according to them, but we've heard companies before saying they don't use the data, they don't save the data, they don't store the data, and they've been caught with it. Google isn't really one of them, although all the companies in this space have been caught giving the audio transcripts from these devices to contractors. So, do you trust them? Is what it comes down to.
No, I do not.
No?
No.
There are some I do and some that I don't.
I trust that they're not trying to be nefarious. I do think that, we're going to find, I'm sure some things happening that normal people will raise an eyebrow at. Let me put it that way.
I don't disagree, but here's a question. How can we expect these services to get better without that data?
I know. That's why I'm totally like, yes,
it's
I understand.
Quite the conundrum. Quite the conundrum.
And I'm hoping that Google does this with facial recognition like that. I once had a NetAtmo camera, and I've talked about this a lot because it was such an intuitive feature. What it did is it recognized your face. They did it locally. Thank you, NetAtmo. And when it didn't see people it recognized for, more than 15 minutes, it would arm your system.
Mm-hmm.
So Google with this sort of facial recognition could do the same thing on the Google Guard product. Is it Guard?
Or the Nest Secure?
The Nest Secure.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. It's my bad. Their security system. And so when you think of something like that, that's actually really neat. And then when you came home, it would just automatically be like, oh, I recognize your face. I'll turn it off now.
Right. Almost like geofencing, but using facial recognition.
Exactly.
And yeah.
It's just more intuitive, more context aware based on individual people. But to get that, you
got to give up something.
Now, I will say you may not, because the NetAtmo did all of this on device. They did not send that data to the cloud. you don't have to send it to the cloud. I'm just throwing that out there. Google, with their local efforts, they could just be like, oh, I know who you look like. Now, if you want it to recognize the friends who are in your photo stream too, which, oh my God, that's terrifying, then you would need the cloud. But you could do this local. And speaking of digital assistants and doing things locally, Madam A. This is actually not exactly new news. It came out last month, but it follows in with this trend that we've been talking about. So we're going to talk about it now. A company called Sentient has created a crazy chip. This is a company that is developing AI chips, and this particular chip, which is the Sentient NDP 100 and the Sentient NDP 101, these are called neural decision processors, and this one is designed to be used with Madam A and the Madam A voice services. This is a tiny, tiny chip that uses less than 150 microwatts to listen for the corresponding wake word. So this is low power for some of these devices. It can recognize, did you say up to 64 commands?
Not commands, but up to 64 different wake words, which I found that interesting. Maybe they're planning ahead for other voice assistants or something.
Well, it doesn't have to be a wake word in the traditional. So you could use this chip as an always listening device, like in a headset or something that's battery powered. And then it would wake up and it would actually, once it hears the wake word, it would wake up a more powerful chip that could process like, Madam A, go find me the cheapest flight to Boston. That's something that would need much more brain power, as it were. But
right.
It's also possible that you could put something like this just in a product and have it recognize a few commands. Like imagine a lamp. Your lamp doesn't actually have to be connected if you wanted. It could just be, you could say name of lamp, lights on, and then it could actually just turn on. That sort of thing becomes super powerful. The manufacturer would in that case get to pick the wake word. So it wouldn't just be lamp. It'd probably be
GE lamp.
Or if I were the lamp manufacturer, here's what I would do. I would pick, 20 options like bedside table lamp, living room lamp, and have those be the recognized words, the wake words, as it were. But
right, because you could, this supports keyword training. So in theory, you could have a default list of say 30, and then the user could actually create their own. If they have, maybe they name their lamps. I don't know, but Fred, lights on.
Oh, that would be delightful. My lamp names are pretty
standard.
Pretty boring. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, no. My lamps are named on our bedside table. I have a lamp named Stacy, and my husband has one named Andrew, which gives us the turn on Stacy, turn on Andrew.
Sorry.
Which is always, it's good for giggles. What can I say?
Yes, it just hit me. Sorry.
Okay. So that's this chip. I think this sort of thing is really exciting. I think it's exciting for the potential not to have things that are connected that maybe don't need to be connected. But you're probably going to see it mostly in like headphones and phones and
wearables
that are
battery powered things. Yeah.
Anyway. All right. So let's talk about, one other smart home-ish news. Smart home-ish. This week is Cedia. So next week we're going to be talking about lots of cool stuff, I imagine. But Centralite. This was a company that produced Zigbee sensors and some other products. They went out of business. Actually, they filed for bankruptcy a while back. We talked about it. Then a company called Eslo purchased them. We talked about Eslo last week because they just launched a new Z-Wave based tiny hub. We'll call it a tiny hub. But we get lots of emails from people saying, hey, what happened to Centralite and where do I get support for my other stuff? So I wanted to help people with that. So there's a new company that's launched called Dragon Technologies. This is the founders of Centralite. And this business, Dragon Technologies, is going to be supporting and servicing and selling spare parts for the legacy Centralite businesses. So this is going to include the Elegance line of products. There's also going to do LightJet and Jetstream. And then there are a couple there's a hotel business. So if you're a hotel running Entrex. These are the guys you're going to want to call. And they're also going to be looking at building some other stuff, including possibly power over Ethernet lighting stuff. So if you are one of those people who was sad about Centralite and curious about what to do, you can reach out to the Dragon Technology folks, and they will help you.
Yay.
Yay. Okay. Moving on from smart homes. Oh, nope, I lied. I keep lying to you guys. Quick little bit. Best Buy. Yeah, they're killing their Insignia brand of connected devices. They had some cameras. They had a Wi-Fi freezer. The app was terrible. I'll just lay it on the line. The app was not great. So they're killing it. And this is kind of surprising.
I guess, I never bought any of the Insignia smart products. They tended to be less expensive and whatnot, but, I'd been using other brands for years before that I was happy with.
The only need you would have is if it were incredibly cheaper, kind of like Wise level cheap, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't that much cheaper. I would agree. And they had some switches and other things that these will still work, but here's the thing. The app is basically going to be useless after November the 6th, I believe.
Yes.
And the switches and other things will still work to a point. Like here's what they've said. The app functionality won't work, but any of the scheduled timers that were set up previously will continue to function. And then of course you have a manual on-off switch on the switch itself. So I would say if you use these and you want to keep your timers and such, make sure they're set up the way you want, because you won't be able to modify them after November 6th.
What's terrifying there?
What's that?
What if one day you want to change those timers?
Then you have to go shopping, quite frankly.
And what is the scarier thing for you?
The thing that bothers me more is that they've sold appliances with the Insignia brand. A small fridge, for example. And the fridge will still keep things cold. But, if you bought something like that for that kind of functionality and you lose the functionality, that's just terrible.
Well, they are offering reimbursements.
Yes, they are. Kind of like Lowe's did with Iris.
That's why I say they're doing this shutdown right. They're giving people, actually, I'd like a little more notice, but they're giving people notice. And they're offering reimbursements for people who bought these appliances. It will be in the form of a Best Buy gift card that doesn't expire. If you did pay someone to have it installed, you're out of money there. But this is why the smart home's frustrating. And I should also mention that I've seen a lot of really frustrated people in the last week or so based on the Google killing the Works with Nest program. So this is kind of the smart home's growing pains, ugly adolescence, I would say. So maybe
I have a better solution that nobody ever seems to want to do, because I'm kind of pushing for it with Vector, the little robot from Anki. Okay, yeah, open source it.
Oh, yeah.
Just open source the software services. And if somebody wants to run their own server, or people want to band together for the good of the community that owns these devices and, charge $5 a year to pay for server costs to keep things running, just open source it and see what happens. Maybe nothing will happen, but at least there's an option.
Yeah, we've seen that with things like the Berg tiny printer that was open sourced. And for a while it worked. And even now there's still people who pop on and they're like, I just found this. I want it to work. And then people are like, give up now.
Maybe this is my new business venture.
There you go.
Buying or getting these folks to open source and putting the service out there and see if it takes.
Well, you could talk to the Centralite guys and see how it works for them. And that has a much larger install base that's willing to pay. All right. In industrial news, Samsara, which this is the company, it was founded like 4 years ago. It's the former Meraki folks. And Meraki is an enterprise Wi-Fi business, and it was amazing. It brought all the functionality you needed to Wi-Fi in the enterprise with all of these devices running around. It made it easy. So yay, they were ahead of their time, very smart. And back in 2015, they launched Samsara. The goal here was to make industrial IoT easy. And they kind of had I'm not going to call it a rocky start. They started out wanting to do everything, and they quickly narrowed it down to asset tracking and, I believe, cold chain management. They're now branching out. This is hardware and software in the cloud. So it's software that you run and the sensors that you put on things, and you have a cloud platform to tie everything together. And Samsara builds nice apps that help you do that easily. I was shocked. They raised this $300 million. They're now valued at $6.3 billion, and they've raised $530 million. So that's like $500 million. But they have 10,000 paying customers, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize this. I had been looking for Samsara customers for a while. It looks like they're kind of more some of the smaller companies and municipalities, but this is great. So go Samsara.
Yeah, according to the press release, they've more than doubled the customer base over the past year, and revenue has grown over 200% annually. So
yeah,
they seem to be doing well.
Well, and a lot of these are really like, if you can get in one, you get your pilot in, and if it works and people like it, you can actually sell incredibly well into these companies. It's just,
you start getting case studies, you get mayors of smart cities talking to other mayors and whatever. And
this is good. The potential to grow really rapidly is there. So yay. Now I have to talk about something a little bit more grim. Trend Micro, the security antivirus.
All of the above.
All of the above. They put out a report, and instead of doing another like, hey, your printers and networked cameras and whatever else are vulnerable, which we all know now, I think most of us know, they went on the dark web and they said, what IoT devices are hackers interested in? What are they talking about related to IoT? And the answers are frankly terrifying. So there is interest. They point out that hackers, and they want to monetize this. They're not just like, woo, I'm excited about, some of them are excited about just breaking into things, but the big key is monetization. And when it comes to monetization, routers, compromising routers so you can build botnets is still a big deal. And for their purposes, they classify a router now as an IoT device. I have some quibbles with that, but we're just going to go with it. I would say buy a new router, change that password. No default hard-coded passwords, good Lord. And they're also looking at things like gas pumps. And
goody.
In Russia, smart meters are being rolled out. So they're like, ooh, let's hack some smart meters. And Android exploits, basically. So they're looking at like crypto miners on Android, which is not actually aimed at phones, because phones, you'll notice that something is sucking your battery life, but they're looking at like Android-based IoT devices, which are everywhere. Lots of TVs. Yep. I have an Android-based oven that also uses a lot of electricity because it's an oven. So would I notice that? I don't know.
Oh, that's one of the things I looked at when I was testing the firewall, checking to see where that data was going from the June oven. And
so it would have caught, the firewall would have caught crypto mining on that thing, right?
It would have captured the data that's telling me there's a lot of information being moved around on your device at various times during the day, and here's where the data is going with servers. I would have to actually look at that. Like, you can set alerts and all, but it's a chatty oven, to be honest. About 6 times a day, it would send like 2 meg of data up to the cloud.
My bandwidth cap.
2 meg. Yeah. But, and I'm sure when you use it, even more would go up, especially if you're recording or using the camera inside it. But
sure. Taking those snapshots of your braising
food selfies.
Selfies? Oh. Anyway. Ugh. They also talk about cameras. If you're not aware of this, if your camera is online, people love packaging that up. I was kind of surprised. Was I surprised? I was kind of dismayed. Probably not as surprised as I should have been. The most popular camera things are based basically what the camera's looking at is the most important thing, and then you package those up. So bedrooms are the most important, and I guess they're the most popular. And then there are things like, hey, cameras that are over retail establishments showing like point of sale systems. So yay, the world is a horrible place. Yes. That was basically the gist of this report for me. The world is a terrible place.
They mentioned, and I know we've spoken about it before, they mentioned Showdown, the search engine for open devices that are out there. And I just happened to tell my wife about that, and she was shocked. I'm like, hey, look, let's go look at some webcams. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, look, this is out there. She was blown away that you could actually search for open webcams and like see things.
Oh, yeah. And so the other thing is in Brazil, they're real big on gas pumps. So they love hacking gas pumps, and they divided things up by language. So the Russian, anybody speaking Russian, English, I believe. I'm trying to remember all the languages.
There was Spanish on there.
Russian, Portuguese, English, Arabic, and Spanish. Not Mandarin, surprising. Maybe that's because China is mostly doing state-sponsored hacking, and there's also like Korean, also state-sponsored hacking. But this is a really interesting report. I'm glad they branched out from the usual, everything's infected, we're all terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But in there, you can see things like somebody offering webcam access for Nest's outdoor cameras and doorbells. Oh, okay, great, fun. Read it and weep. Possibly literally.
All your data is for sale.
Yeah. So about that Nest Hub Max with facial recognition.
And the camera with the electric or electronic
the
shutter.
camera that can't be turned off. We're not just, this is serious. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's all the news. We're going to end you on this bummer of a note right there.
Think positive.
Woo, go IoT. But it is now time for the IoT Podcast Hotline. The IoT Podcast Hotline is brought to you by Schlage. Schlage's wide variety of smart locks lets you create the smart home of your dreams. So learn more about Schlage's smart home solutions and compatibility with Siri, Google Assistant, Madam A, and more at schlage.com/IoT. Okay, let's get to it. So first off, if you would like to be featured on the hotline, all you have to do is call us at 512-623-7424. And not only will we maybe answer your question, but you might also be entered to win our monthly contest. This week's contest winner will receive a Schlage lock. This is a very exciting thing. It's a good lock. I like it. Not just because they sponsor the show, but because it is a really high quality lock.
It is.
All right. So if you would like to do that, give us a call at that number. And this week we're doing something a little bit different because we answered a question, I think it was last week, on tracking tools. And we got some good responses and found some new options out there. So we wanted to revisit this, plus get this wonderful answer from one of our listeners who called in to provide it. So we're going to, instead of answering a question, we're going to, I guess, further answer a question and hear from you guys about a potential answer. So last week, the question related to tracking tools that this fellow lent out to people. As a reminder, we suggested a pen and paper.
Well, that was step one.
Step one, NFC tags, a fancy GPS tagging system, if he really didn't trust his friends. Or did we have something else?
We did. We had Bluetooth
trackers. That's it. So, Kevin, you found another tracking option out there.
I did. So I found a couple of apps that will actually do this for you, and most of them work with all of the suggestions and even more that we discussed last week, whether it's Bluetooth or NFC, etc. So the one I saw a nice video of on how it works is Tool Taggers. It should be available for both iOS and Android, and it's literally the solution, which is great. However, we did get a call with another solution, which Tool Taggers would work with as well. So why don't we play that?
Let's hear from this unnamed individual who called and left a really good message.
Hi, I'm responding to the suggestion of using NFC tags or Bluetooth tile or any other tracking devices for the gentleman who is looking to loan out tools. There's a much simpler solution, I believe, which would be to simply print QR codes onto stickers. It's something that can be done inexpensively on the fly for as many tools that he might have. The benefit of NFC is that you would have a unique ID key that is difficult to replicate. The downside of QR codes is that it is easy to replicate. So NFC is great for identifying a person or an individual or a unique thing that is in a particular place or a unique place. But QR codes are really great for just keeping track of things.
Okay, so QR codes. I thought this was awesome and really easy.
And very inexpensive because you're not buying any radio or anything that needs cellular connectivity or anything like that. You can just basically create your own QR codes for the items. You should have enough room to like maybe put a contact name, maybe a phone number as far as who you loaned it to. You print out a sticker with your custom QR code. You scan that QR code in an app to save the data so you know who's got what, and you're done.
Yeah. This is actually something you could do. I mean, you could do it for lending out all kinds of things, books. And
Sure.
that's why I decided we should focus on this question more, because I feel like, I mean, I loan things out all the time. Of course, when I loan out a book, I don't expect it to come back. It's kind of like I
What?
gift you to the universe. I only loan out books that I don't mind.
Oh, I'll camp out on a doorstep to get my book back.
Good to know. All right.
Yeah.
I thought this was books, clothing a little less. You could stick a sticker on the label, I suppose. But yeah, for people who loan things out all the time and have friends, this is a really useful segment. All right. That concludes the news portion of this week's show. But please stay tuned for our guest, Elizabeth Schlatten, who is the CEO of ECBM, and she's going to be talking about a couple things. One, the difference between Industry 4.0 and IoT, plus how your job will change if you are a salesperson in a company with the IoT. So, really good interview. I enjoyed it tremendously. So, stay tuned for that. And now, let's hear from our sponsor. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Affero, and I have Joe Britt, the CEO of Affero, here to talk to us about the infamous knob vulnerability in Bluetooth and how Affero was unaffected by this. But first, I'm going to ask you to describe Affero for our new listeners.
Affero provides an IoT platform that simplifies how you connect anything, really, to the internet. We can help you build a business case and take you all the way through rollout, ongoing management, and data analytics. Affero also happens to have the 5th largest patent portfolio in IoT globally, especially around security, onboarding, provisioning, and device management. And our customers tell us that Affero really is the best choice for end user experience and developer productivity. It's also beautifully designed and easy to use and fast, and as we'll discuss today, very, very secure.
Excellent. So how did you make Affero immune to the knob vulnerability?
Affero provides its own security layer. Now, that layer coexists with, but doesn't rely on, any security that's built into the underlying communication protocol. We designed this Affero security architecture around 3 core components. First, we use a hardware root of trust. This is a secure memory, which is provisioned in a trusted and secure factory. That can then be sent to an untrusted device manufacturing factory. Conceptually, that secure memory serves a similar function to a SIM card, but for the endpoint device. And next, we created software to implement a communication tunnel, similar to VPN, but very lightweight and not dependent on TCP/IP. This lets us provide VPN-like secure communications over any transport, including Bluetooth, which is not a TCP/IP network. Finally, we used all of this, coupled with hardware-backed security in the cloud, to enable secure communications between the endpoint and the cloud. And so to make IoT trustworthy, not only do you have to secure all these data paths, but you also have to secure identities and handshakes, build security with resilience, and then secure the manufacturing process, the supply chain. Our customers love it when serious vulnerabilities are discovered, and it's like nothing happened.
I imagine. So for many people, security seems like an added cost, but you're seeing some surprisingly cool benefits.
One benefit, for example, is the Affero scan to onboard process, which is the most secure and reliable onboarding experience on the market. We call it on in 60, since the whole process takes less than 60 seconds. Another benefit is the protocol-agnostic nature of the Affero platform, because this gives Affero customers the freedom to pick from different communication technologies for different projects within the same platform and enjoy the same level of security. And as for costs, we've created many patented technologies that reduce the cost of security to the point where the costs are low, it saves you money, and the ROI is very compelling.
All right. And please remind us where people can go to find out more information about Affero's platform.
Affero.io/go-big is the best place to start. If you're a developer, please also take a look at developer.affero.io.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Elizabeth Schlatten, who is the CEO of a company in Germany called ECBM. Hello, Elizabeth. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm very well.
Excellent. So, to kick it off, we should probably start with what the heck is ECBM?
So ECBM is a small company. We're 15 people now, and we offer our customers full-service IoT solutions, which means we start with digital strategy, what business models would be interesting for them in the future, and what can IoT and artificial intelligence do for their process efficiency. And then we help them with defining solutions and finding the right technology, and then we do technology integration and make sure that what they get out of an IoT project actually lands in the right systems and with the right people. And we help with cultural change as well. So the whole package for implementing an IoT and artificial intelligence solution.
My goodness, that is complete. So it's more of a consulting firm, yes?
Well, it's a mix. We've got both consultants, project managers, data scientists, and developers, machine learning developers and network experts. So these people are very, very different people that we have.
Yes, that's crazy. All right. So talk to me about your work and how you've seen it change in maybe the last 5 years or so as people have become more aware of what IoT is and how they might want to deploy it. What does that look like? Especially give us that German perspective, or maybe it's the European perspective.
It has to be a little bit the German perspective because Germany is slightly different from its neighbors. German people are pretty conservative when it comes to technology, and they let other people try it out first. And once it has matured, they take it up and then they try to perfect it. So that applies to the IoT and digital transformation in general. In the last 5 years, people have opened up a little bit to the idea of actually connecting more things and letting data fly through the air and through cables and actually using data. We are very, very concerned with privacy and with the big bad NSA stealing our data. So that has hindered IoT adoption a lot. However, now with a new generation of CEOs taking over in a lot of the manufacturing companies, there's a renewed interest in the technology and in how it can help them develop their business. German manufacturing is very much about precision and perfection. So the solutions that we deploy here must be pretty much totally reliable. There's no 95% reliability. There's no experimentation. So what we deliver from a technical perspective has to be pretty close to perfect. So that's probably one of the differences between the German market and the US market.
Okay. And Germany is actually the home of the term Industry 4.0, which I know a lot of people are like, well, isn't that IoT? So can you explain the difference between Industry 4.0, which has been around for a while, and what you're thinking of when you talk about IoT?
IoT for me is a technology term. It's about sensors, connectivity, and data analysis. Whereas Industry 4.0 is an application of technology. It combines IoT, AR, machine learning, cloud technologies, and robotics to achieve total automation in factories. I've been in a car factory where I have really not seen any people in the whole hall. Everything was moving around on its own. Everything was tagged with RFID. All the little parts were tagged with RFID. There were autonomous vehicles in the factory and everything. And that's then the application of a set of technologies. So that's for me the difference between the two.
So no people getting involved is 4.0?
Yeah, no people, extremely high efficiency, high quality and higher speed, and also more individualized production. So you can do mass production more individualized because it's easier and faster to change the way things move through a factory. So the production lines are less fixed and things can move around a lot easier.
Got it. Okay. So in that example, do you need IoT to have Industry 4.0?
IoT is an integral part or one of the base technologies to implement Industry 4.0 because you have to connect everything. All the machines have to do what the previous machine has done, what the next machine is going to do. The parts actually have to know which path they have to take through the flexible production lines, and the autonomous vehicles must be connected to know where they're going, what they're picking up, and where they're going to put it. So everything is connected. That's, for me, that's the IoT, and without that, none of this is going to work.
Well, you have mentioned something that's really exciting to me, which is this idea of process and change management and getting the people on board. So I'd like to talk to you about that because we have a lot of guests who come on and they'll talk about like, oh, this is the wireless technology I used. These are the sensors. This is the data architecture. But when you're talking to customers, at what point do they realize they need to think about the people?
When they talk to me, they realize that in the first meeting because we always start with strategy and with people and with culture. Technology is something that enables change and enables new ways of doing things, but people have to actually use it. This is always our starting point. If you implement a technology, if you throw a piece of software at people, they're just not going to use it on their own. Most people don't like to change the way they've done things on their own. And if you change the product that you sell, then you also have to change the people who sell it and the people who develop products in the future. You have to change the way they behave, you have to change the way they talk to their customers, and you also have to change how you incentivize them. So for me, that's always one of the first conversations that I have with the customer.
Okay, there's a lot to break down there. It sounds like there are two elements. One is probably people on like a factory line or people inside the organization who are just dealing with the resulting insights from any deployment. And then there's this concept of how you train your sales staff to maybe sell a service instead of a product. So let's start with the first, which is how do you talk to people give them a heads up? I don't even know how that process works, where let's say you've implemented some sort of system that is going to deliver insights that maybe are higher level. So instead of having someone walk around and check that all the pipes are not leaking, you implement a system and then that person is suddenly dealing with like alerts as opposed to just walking around and kind of checking.
Generally, there's a level of fear that you have to overcome, fear of change and fear of being obsolete as well. What we see is generally that with IoT projects, we don't destroy jobs, we just change the way they work. And it is necessary to really invest time into the individual role change. So someone who's previously walked around and touched the pipes, looked at the pipes, they now have to look at a screen. This is a totally different way of thinking, and it's about communicating how it enriches their work, how it makes them better qualified for the future, how it actually makes them more employable for the future. And then you really have to put an effort into training them really focused on their area. What I've seen a lot is that people go in and train on a piece of technology, but we train on processes. So we look at the new process, what's it going to be like, and we play through that process, not through the whole piece of technology.
Oh, that's a really interesting idea. Can you talk to me about how long it might take to train someone? Is this ongoing? Do you come back in a few years? Does their job change as the systems become more automated?
The job changes, a lot of jobs change a lot. And sometimes it's really easy to get people to do things differently. If they are pretty new to their job, it tends to be easier. If there's obviously also a generation thing that people who grow up with technology find it easier to use it at work as well. Whereas someone who's been doing the same job for 30 years finds it pretty hard to change. So how much time you have to invest changes from person to person and also from project to project. There's no rule, but it always pays to do training in small groups, sometimes even on an individual basis if there's only one individual for whom a lot changes, and invest hours, sometimes days, in moving them to a new role.
And are companies prepared to change the metrics associated with that job or even to switch it up? In some ways, I feel like, if your job is to look around and like track pipes, you can track 7 in an hour, then that's obviously a metric that you're measured on. How are companies trying to adapt? And then are they flexible if the employee comes back and is like, hey, you know what? This is crazy.
It depends very much on the leadership. If you want to do a successful project, you have to be flexible and you have to really think through from the beginning how you measure people. Often enough, we find that people who've been leading manufacturing lines or plants for 20, 30 years, they find the flexibility pretty hard to achieve. So it's not just the people who work on the line who find it hard to change, but also the leadership in the production plants. So that, again, is hard work. It's a lot of training. And sometimes, some people really just don't want to change. And in a few cases, the people had to change roles and new people had to come in and move the change ahead as well.
That makes sense. Okay, now let's talk about changing your sales culture, because a lot of companies, when they implement some sort of IoT effort, they realize that thanks to like prescriptive analytics, they can actually offer something as a service instead of just selling a lump of machinery. So that changes incentives, that changes people on the receiving side have to like rebudget. You're no longer going to have this massive annual cost or massive semi-annual cost. How does that process work? How do you talk to your customers about that?
So we look at their actual sales channels, what they use currently, direct sales versus indirect sales. Changing indirect is always harder than changing direct. In some cases, we've had customers hire more salespeople directly and reduce their percentage of indirect sales because it's easier to change their behavior and to influence them. In indirect channels, if you are too complicated, they will just say, no, sorry, go away. But also for indirect channels, there's pretty good ways of incentivizing them to sell services. I mean, the main difference is really that if you, let's say you sell machines. Today you sell, 10 machines a month, and you get paid a certain percentage of the value of the machines. As an indirect sales partner, that means every month you have to run to sell 10 machines to get your money, but you get a lot of money. In the future, if you change this to a service, you can create a recurring income. It's a lot less in the first month than it used to be, and that is really hard for them to get through. But once they get it in their head that they might get a recurring income for years, and if you help them through that calculation, look, here's basically your pension, not quite, but it goes in that direction. You get a level of certainty in your income for years. That's a really, really interesting conversation. So the ones that understand that, they might become your most loyal indirect sales partners. And for direct sales, it's the same thing. You have to, in a lot of companies that sell things and machines and SIM cards and phones and whatever, salespeople are incentivized again by a percentage of the value of the thing they've sold. And you'll see a significant drop in their income in the first months if you don't change the way you incentivize them. It's a pretty difficult conversation. You have to lead them through mathematical models and make them understand that they actually, over time, they can earn much more and they can be much more successful, and it's more reliable. But they don't get these peaks in income if they have a fantastically successful month. So again, it's a lot of conversation, a lot of explaining things to people and helping them see how recurring income is actually really good for them.
Ooh, that does feel like it would be tough. How often does that succeed, or do you see a lot of switchover and transition in sales staff?
There's a lot of switchover and transition in sales staff, more than actual people. So I think it's more than 50% over a year or a year and a half that tend to be less successful than they were and that don't get it, that it just takes a little bit more time. And it's easier, to be honest, if you have a sales conversation with a customer, if you have for years and years, you've sold machines, you have a one-off conversation and you've sold it. That's actually an easier job than selling a service. So you need to work a little bit harder for your recurring income. So that's why there's, I think, probably more than 50% of people change actually in sales.
Wow, that is crazy. Now, ultimately, though, if I look at buying something once, and I guess we could have crazy conversations about like net present value of money, but if I'm spending $10 million on a machine that I expect to last 10 years versus spending, let's say, $100,000 a month for something over the next 10 years, I'm ending up paying more. And usually it's significantly more on those things. Are customers, are they buying into this?
Yeah, they are actually, because, it depends. Some customers have a lot of cash on hand right now. We've had a few very, very good economic years here. So right now it's quite easy to get them to invest. But now we're moving into recession again, probably. It's much easier to start having the conversation, pay later. Pay a little bit later. Don't spend the CapEx, make it OpEx. So it depends on the time a little bit, but most customers right now start really liking the pay later conversation.
Yes, I think everyone likes the pay later conversation. Like, what? Yes, I will take that. And then the final thing I'll talk to you about on this is how do you talk to them about how they should set their pricing when you switch from selling something as a product to a service? Because I imagine that's a really difficult thing to set.
We help them with that, and the best methodology that we have for that is to ask their customers or potential customers what they would be willing to pay for the service. So we do really well-considered market research, and we try to figure out what customers would pay. That's the first step. And then in the second step, we try to implement a simple prototype if it's possible. And we actually give the prototype to a few customers, and we try to sell it to them, so together with the customer. So that's how we try to figure out what the customer's actually willing to pay before investing huge amounts of money into product development.
Got it. And when you offer it to them, are you like, would you pay $10 for this? Would you pay $20 for this? Or is it like you give it to them for a while and then you're like, okay, now I want to start charging you for it, and you set a rate and see what happens?
So in the market research, we use comparisons. So we ask them, would you buy this or would you buy that? That's a lot of comparisons, and depending on their way of choices through all the options, we can see, without explicitly asking them, would you pay $5 for this service? We will figure out if they would or wouldn't.
And then how many of your customers are trying to switch everything over? Most companies I talk to, they're pretty resigned to having over the next 10 years both a software as a service type model, so a recurring revenue model, and then also a big CapEx purchase model. And that feels complicated to have both.
There's generally no way around having both at the moment, because our customers are not all the same, and not everyone is willing to buy a digital service or buy any kind of service attached to a product. Some simply want a machine, and if you don't sell machines with nothing attached to them, you're going to lose a big part of the business. So this is a slow transition, and yes, I believe it'll take anywhere between 10 and 20 years before you can just go with one model.
Wow, that is a long time. All right, so there's still a role in the world for those other sales guys. It's just shrinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think over the next 10 to 20 years, selling things will definitely move to the internet even more than it has today, even in Germany. But the more complicated the purchase is, the more relevant the salespeople will remain.
Excellent. And some of these purchases are super complicated. All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on the show this week. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks very much for having me.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.